What would you do if your heart was closed for many years? What would you do if you lived in silence and did not trust anyone? This was my life. My name is Sophie. I am 26 years old. I lived with my father in Whitby, a fishing town in the north of England. We had a small bicycle shop on a narrow street near the harbor. I want to share my story with you. This story is about silence, trust, and how one person can change your life. It is also a story about fear, because when you open your heart, you can lose something too. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe, share, and write a comment. It helps me so much and gives me strength to keep telling more stories. Let's continue. My father was a quiet man. His name was Henry. He fixed bicycles for many years. He worked with his hands from early morning until late evening. He did not talk much. He came home, ate his food, and sat by the fire. He was not unkind, but he lived in silence. My mother left us when I was very young. I did not remember her face. Father never spoke about her. When I asked as a child, he only said, "She is gone." That was all. After some years, I stopped asking. So it was only me and my father. Our house was small and cold in winter, but I got used to it. Every day looked the same. We opened the shop, worked on bicycles, and closed it when the sun went down. Some days fishermen came to fix their old bicycles. Some days children came with broken wheels. I cleaned the shop and helped with small things, but most of the time I stayed quiet, just like my father. At school, I had no close friends. Other girls talked and laughed together, but I stayed alone. I listened to the teachers, did my work, and went home. I did not play with them. I did not trust them. I thought people came and went too easily. My father once said, "People leave. Do not expect them to stay." I believed him. Whitby was a quiet town. Fishing boats came and went every day. The harbor was always busy with nets, ropes, and gulls flying above. But even in the busy harbor, I felt alone. I liked walking near the sea in the evening, but I did not speak to anyone. I thought this was my life. I thought I needed nothing more. Then one morning, something small happened. I was sweeping the floor in the shop when the bell on the door rang. A woman walked in. She looked around the shop and then stepped closer. She said her bicycle chain was broken. I did not look much at her face. I only asked her to leave the bicycle, and I told her my father would fix it. She thanked me and smiled. Her smile was soft. I did not answer, and I went back to work. She left soon after. I thought that was the end, but it was not the end. The next day she came back. Her bicycle was fixed, but still she came. She stood at the door and looked inside. I asked her if she needed something. She said, "Can I watch?" I felt confused. "Watch what?" I asked. She said, "You work. I like to see how you repair things." I shook my head and told her it was not interesting. I expected her to leave, but she did not. She said, "I will just wait outside then." For many days after that, she came back. Sometimes she asked small questions. Sometimes she only sat outside the shop. My father noticed her. One evening he said, "That woman is different." I did not reply. I did not want to think about her, but she stayed in my mind. One evening, after we closed the shop, I walked to the park near the harbor. The sky was turning red. I saw her again. She was sitting alone on a wooden bench, looking at the sea. I walked past, but she turned and spoke. "Do you like the harbor?" she asked. I was surprised. Nobody asked me questions like that. I did not know what to say. I only said, "Yes." She smiled, but she did not speak more. She just sat there in silence. I felt strange. I told myself she was like all others, and soon she would stop coming. But she did not stop. She started bringing small things to the shop. One day she placed a cup of coffee on the table near my father. He smiled and thanked her. I did not touch it. I said, "I don't drink coffee." She smiled again and said, "Then I will bring tea next time." And she did. She placed the cup near me, but I did not drink it. Still, she never looked upset. She always smiled softly and left when her tea was finished. I began to notice her more. She did not talk too much. She did not ask too many questions. She just stayed close, as if silence was enough. That was new for me. Most people wanted answers. Most people wanted attention. She did not. Her name was Sarah. She told me one day as she sat outside, "My name is Sarah," she said. "I moved to Whitby last month." I only said, "I am Sophie." That was all. She did not ask more. I was thankful for that. Days passed, and Sarah kept coming. Every morning she stopped at the shop. Every evening she sat by the park bench near the harbor. Slowly, I began to see her not as a visitor, but as part of my days. I did not want to say it, but I noticed when she was not there. One evening she came late. The shop was quiet. My father had already gone home. I was cleaning the floor when she walked in. She smiled and said, "Sorry, I had something to do today." I said nothing, but I felt my hands move faster. I did not know why. She placed something on the table and said, "For you." It was a simple bracelet made of string. She said, "I made it. You can keep it." Then she left. That night I sat in my room, looking at the bracelet. It was small and plain, but I kept holding it. I did not understand why, but I did not want to put it away. The next morning I went to the shop early. I cleaned the tools, swept the floor, and waited for my father. The bracelet was still in my pocket. I touched it from time to time. I told myself it was nothing, but it stayed with me all day. Sarah came later than usual. She walked in and placed a cup of tea on the table. "Here," she said with her soft smile. I looked at it for a long time. Then, for the first time, I lifted the cup and took a small sip. The tea was warm. It felt strange, but not in a bad way. Sarah did not speak. She only smiled and sat on the chair near the door. I worked, and she watched. For the first time, the silence did not feel heavy. From that day, things began to change. She came every morning. She brought tea. I drank it. Sometimes we talked a little. She told me she lived in a small flat near the harbor. She said she liked the sea air. She said she liked quiet places. I listened. I did not tell her much about myself, but she did not ask for more. That made me feel safe. In the evenings, I often walked to the park. Sarah was always there. She sat on the same wooden bench near the water. Some days she talked about simple things. The color of the sky, the sound of the gulls, the smell of the sea. Some days she stayed quiet, and I sat next to her. We looked at the water. It was enough. My father noticed the change. One night after closing the shop, he looked at me and said, "That woman cares about you." I frowned. "She is just friendly," I said, but his eyes stayed on me for a long time. He shook his head and said no more. One evening, Sarah asked me, "Do you ever think of leaving Whitby?" Her question surprised me. "No," I said quickly. "This is my home." She smiled, but her smile was not the same. "Home is not always a place," she said. I did not understand what she meant. I wanted to ask, but I stayed quiet. As weeks passed, I noticed small things about her. She laughed softly when she was nervous. She always sat on the same side of the bench, as if that place belonged to her. She looked at the sky when she was thinking. These small things stayed in my mind. I carried them with me, even when I wanted to forget. One rainy day, the shop was empty. No one brought bicycles. My father went home early. I stayed to clean the tools. I thought Sarah would not come in such weather. But then I saw her at the door. She was wet from the rain, but she was smiling. "You are still here," she said. I frowned. "You are wet." She laughed softly. "Yes, I know." I went to the back of the shop and brought a towel. She dried her face and sat down near me. For a long time, we only listened to the rain on the roof. Then she spoke. "Do you ever feel lonely?" I froze. No one ever asked me that before. At first, I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I was fine alone. But I stopped. Because she was right. If I never felt lonely, then why did I let her stay? Why did I sit with her in the park? Why did I drink her tea? I did not answer. She looked at me, her eyes soft, and said, "But you let me stay." I opened my mouth to argue, but I could not. She was right. From that day, I began to feel different. When Sarah smiled, I noticed it. When she was not there, I felt her absence. I still told myself I did not need anyone, but I started to wait for her every morning. I looked for her in the park every evening. When she was late, my hands worked faster. When she was quiet, I listened harder. One evening, we sat on the bench as the sun went down. The water shone gold. The air was cool. She turned to me and asked, "If I leave one day, will you miss me?" Her words hit me like a wave. I stared at her. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I did not care, but the words did not come. She smiled, but this time it was a sad smile. "It is okay," she said softly. "I already know the answer." That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, looking at the bracelet on my table. I turned it in my fingers again and again. Her question stayed in my mind. "If I leave, will you miss me?" I did not want to answer, but I knew the truth. The next day, she did not come to the shop. I told myself she was busy. I told myself it did not matter. But the hours passed and she never appeared. The shop felt cold. The sound of tools felt empty. That evening I walked to the park. The bench was empty. The water moved slow. The gulls cried above. But nothing felt the same. The day after, she was still gone. My father asked, "Where is your friend?" I said nothing. My hands shook as I cleaned the counter. I did not want to admit it, but I knew I missed her. When evening came, I went to the park again. The bench was empty, but this time, something was there. A scarf, folded neatly, was lying on the seat. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was hers. I held the scarf in my hands. It was soft and light, with a simple blue line near the edge. I looked around, but Sarah was not there. The bench was empty. The harbor was quiet. The water moved slowly, and the gulls flew above. I stood there for a long time. I wanted her to walk back to the bench. I wanted to see her soft smile again. But she did not come. That night, I put the scarf on the chair in my room. I placed the bracelet next to it. I sat on my bed and looked at both. My eyes felt heavy. I told myself I would not cry, but my eyes grew wet. I had lived many years without people. I had lived many years in silence. I told myself I did not need anyone, but now, for the first time, I felt the truth. I did not want to be alone anymore. The next morning, I went to the shop. My father was already working on a bicycle. He looked at me and asked, "Will she come today?" I shook my head. I tried to speak, but no words came. He did not ask again. He only said, "You miss her." I cleaned the shop. I arranged the tools in straight lines. I wiped the counter twice. I drank the tea Sarah left the day before, but it tasted different without her smile near me. Every time the bell rang, I looked at the door, but it was never her. In the evening, I walked to the park again. The bench was still empty. The scarf was gone now because I had taken it. The place felt cold. I sat down and waited. The sun went down. The water turned dark. Still, she did not come. I stayed until the harbor lights shone on the water. Then I walked home slowly. Days passed, and Sarah never returned. Each morning I hoped to see her at the shop. Each evening I hoped to see her on the bench. But she was not there. Life in Whitby went on. Boats came and went. Fishermen pulled heavy nets from the water. People walked past the harbor with baskets of fish. But for me, everything felt different. At night, I held the bracelet in my hand. I wrapped the scarf around my shoulders. I thought of her soft smile. I remembered her voice when she asked, "If I leave one day, will you miss me?" At that time, I had no answer. Now, I had one. Yes, I missed her. I told myself many things. I said she was only a visitor. I said she was just friendly. I said she did not mean much. But I knew the truth. She had stayed when I did not expect it. She had brought tea when no one else cared. She had sat in silence when silence was all I had. And now, she was gone. One evening, my father and I closed the shop early. We walked home together. The sky was pale, and the smell of the sea was strong. He looked at me and said, "You are not the same. You look for her every day." I wanted to deny it, but I could not. "She is gone," I whispered. My father touched my arm gently. "But she gave you something," he said. I thought about his words. That night, I sat with the bracelet and the scarf. I understood what he meant. Sarah gave me more than tea, more than smiles, more than gifts. She showed me that I could let someone in. She showed me that silence did not have to mean emptiness. She showed me that my heart did not have to stay closed. Weeks turned into months. Sarah never came back. I did not know where she went. I did not know if I would ever see her again. But I carried her with me. Every morning, I touched the bracelet before opening the shop. Every evening, I wore the scarf when I walked to the bench. The bench was still empty, but I sat there anyway. I watched the water. I listened to the gulls. And I remembered her. Sometimes I thought I saw her in the crowd at the harbor. A woman in a coat, walking fast. A woman with dark hair, carrying a bag. I stopped and looked, closer. But it was never her. My heart beat fast, then slowed again. I told myself not to hope, but I still hoped. One Sunday, I walked along the pier after church. Families were laughing, and children ran with balloons. I felt alone in the noise. Then a fisherman I knew called out to me. He asked if I was still helping my father in the shop. I said yes. Then he asked, "And your friend? The one who always came for tea?" I could not speak for a moment. Finally, I said, "She left." He nodded and said, "She was kind." I only smiled weakly. Back at home, I sat by the fire. My father read the newspaper. I looked at the scarf on my lap. I asked softly, "Do you think she will come back?" My father lowered the paper and looked at me. "Maybe not," he said. "But she left you a gift that stays." I looked at him. "What gift?" He pointed at my heart. "The gift of feeling." That night, I walked to the harbor again. The sea was dark and the wind was sharp. I sat on the empty bench and closed my eyes. I thought of Sarah's soft voice. I thought of her gentle laugh. I whispered into the air, "Thank you." No one answered. The bench stayed empty, but I did not feel fully alone. Because Sarah was gone, yes, but she had opened a door inside me. A door I did not know was there. A door I could not close again. I was still Sophie. I still lived in Whitby. I still worked in the bicycle shop with my father. But I was not the same Sophie as before. My heart was no longer locked. I knew what it meant to miss someone. I knew what it meant to care. And that was the end of my story. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share this video. Write a comment too, because I love to read your thoughts. Your support helps me to keep telling more stories for you. What would you do if the only person you trusted promised to protect your world, and then left without a word? I was a queen, but I was also a woman with a heart, and that heart was broken by the man who once said I was everything to him. My name is Layla. I was born in Solaris, a land of gold and water. My father was King Miro. He was strong, but kind. He ruled the land with peace for many years. People loved him. I was his only child, so everyone knew I would be the next queen. From a young age, I learned how to speak, read, write, and think like a ruler. My teachers were the best in the kingdom. They taught me numbers, languages, and stories from other lands. But I was not only a student. I was also a girl who liked to walk near the river and dream about love. When I was 17, my mother became very sick. She was quiet and sweet. She always held my hand and called me her bright star. One morning, I went to her room and saw the nurse crying. I knew what happened. My mother was gone. That day, I did not speak. I only sat by her empty bed. The world felt cold. My father never smiled again. He worked hard to stay strong, but I could see his hands shaking sometimes. I knew I had to be ready soon. One day, I would wear the crown, and I had to be strong too. When I turned 19, my father took me to a meeting with the royal guards. They talked about danger near the north border. A new ruler named Cassian was taking lands near us. He came from Carthene, a strong empire across the sea. People said he was smart, brave, and fast to fight. My father wanted peace. He wrote a letter to Cassian and asked for a meeting. Weeks passed. No answer. One morning, a ship from Carthene came. The flag had a silver eagle. It was Cassian's mark. Before I tell you more, please support this story. If you enjoy English stories with emotion and simple words, please subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment below. Your support helps me tell more stories like this. Cassian did not send a letter. He came himself. I was there when he walked into the palace. He wore black and gold. He looked calm, but I saw how his eyes moved fast. He was young, maybe 25, not much older than me. He looked at me and smiled. I tried to look strong, but I felt a little nervous. My father welcomed him and offered tea. They spoke for a long time in the big hall. I stood behind them and listened. Cassian said he wanted trade, not war. He wanted to build roads between our lands. My father asked many questions. In the end, they agreed to talk again in 1 month. After Cassian left, my father said something that stayed in my mind. That young man is not only a soldier, he is a builder, but he hides many things. I thought about that for days. 1 month later, Cassian came again. This time, he stayed in the guest palace for 3 nights. The second day, I walked in the garden and found him near the roses. He smiled and said, "Do you walk here often?" I said yes. I told him I liked the flowers. He said his mother also loved roses. We talked for a long time. He was not cold or strict. He asked about my dreams. I told him I wanted to be a good queen. He said, "You already sound like one." That was the first time I felt something warm in my heart. After that visit, Cassian came often. He brought books from his land. He showed me maps. He taught me about his people. I listened. I asked questions. Sometimes we sat near the river and watched the sky. I started to wait for him. I smiled more. I slept better. I didn't tell anyone, but I started to like him. One night, he looked at me and said, "If you were my queen, I would protect your world with my life." I said nothing, but I looked at him for a long time. I wanted to believe him. That winter, my father became ill. The doctor said he must rest. He stayed in bed for many weeks. I had to sit in his place during royal meetings. I listened to the guards, the traders, and the farmers. I asked for reports. I made small decisions. People started to call me Little Queen. I smiled, but inside I felt fear. What if my father did not get better? One evening, Cassian came with a message. He said his land was also facing problems. A small group of rebels had attacked a village. He had to return home soon. I walked with him to the gate. He looked at me and said, "Layla, if anything happens, send for me. I will come." I looked at him and asked, "Will you come even if it means war?" He held my hand. "Yes, I promise." Then he left. 1 week later, my father passed away. The sky was gray. The palace was silent. Everyone wore black. I walked behind the royal guards and watched as they closed his tomb. My hand felt cold. I could not cry. I had to stay calm. I had to speak to the people. I had to wear the crown. I was now Queen of Solaris. The next days were full of meetings, letters, and rules. I sat in my father's chair. I wore his ring. I read his old notes. I asked the guards to bring me the plans for the new year. I worked late into the night. but my heart was not strong. I missed my father. I missed Cassian. Soon, I heard news from the north. A group of soldiers crossed the border. They wore red marks. They burned 2 farms and scared the people. The guards came to me. "We must act," they said. I asked, "Do we know who they are?" They said no. But I had a feeling. I sent a message to Cassian. I asked for help. I waited. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days. No answer. Then the captain came to me with a letter. It had a red mark, a seal from Carthene. I opened it with hope, but what I read made my hands drop the page. Cassian was not coming. The letter from Cassian was short. It said he was sorry. He said the rebels in his land were growing stronger. He said he could not send help now. He asked me to stay calm and protect my people. At the end, he wrote, "When this is over, I will come." But he did not say when. He did not promise anything. There were no kind words. There was no plan. Only silence at the end. I sat alone in my room for a long time. I did not cry. I just looked at the paper. The sun went down. The wind came in through the window. I thought of the first time we met. His smile. His voice. His promise. It all felt like a dream now. The next morning I called my guards. "We must protect Solaris without him," I said. The captain looked at me. "Yes, my queen," he said. "We will be ready." For the next week, I worked every day. I spoke to the army. I spoke to the farmers. I checked the food storage. I sent my men to the north to watch the border. I told the city to stay calm. But inside, I did not feel calm. I felt alone. I was not just a queen. I was a young woman with too much pain in her heart. One night, I walked to the old rose garden. It was cold. The wind was strong. I sat on the stone bench where Cassian once sat with me. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wanted to believe he would walk in again, holding a flower. I waited, even though I knew he was not coming. 2 days later, the guards brought a man to the palace. He wore strange clothes and had blood on his arm. "He came from the north gate," the captain said. "He says he has news." The man knelt. "Your Highness," he said, "the red-marked soldiers are from Carthene. They are not rebels. They follow General Hadon." I stood up. "General Hadon?" I asked. "Is he not part of Cassian's army?" "Yes," the man said. "But he is no longer loyal to Cassian. He works with the council now. They want more land. They want Solaris." I felt cold. "And what about Cassian?" I asked. The man looked down. "They say he left for the west. He is not in Carthene anymore." I could not believe it. "Left?" I said. "Why?" "No one knows," the man said. "But he did not fight the council. He just left." That night, I could not sleep. My eyes stayed open. I looked at the stars. I thought of my father's words. That young man hides many things. I should have listened more. I should have asked more. But I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in love. The next morning, I wore my silver dress and my mother's necklace. I walked into the war room with the map. "Tell me our choices," I said. The captain showed me the plan. "We can hold the wall," he said, "but we do not have enough men to fight for long." I looked at the map. Then I said, "We will not wait for them to take our home. We will speak to the mountain people, ask for help, send a team." The guards moved fast. Messengers left the city. People started to work harder. We gave food to the soldiers. We trained new fighters. I stood with them every day. I walked through the market. I sat with the farmers. I spoke to the mothers. I told them, "We will not fall." 1 week later, a letter came back. The Mountain King would help us. He was old, but he respected my father. He sent 500 men and supplies. When they arrived, I went to meet them myself. The Mountain King was there too. He looked at me and said, "You are not your father, but you are strong like him." We joined forces. We made a plan. The enemy from Carthene would come from the East Hill. We placed men there. We hid our best archers. We waited. The battle began at sunrise. I stood in the tower with my guard. I could see the red flags in the wind. The sound of drums filled the air. Arrows flew. Horses ran. The sky turned gray with dust. I saw people fall. I saw fire, but I did not look away. The fight lasted all day. By night, we saw the enemy start to move back. Our archers had taken many of them down. The mountain fighters stood strong. The gate held. The next morning, we saw the red flags were gone. They had left. I did not cheer. I did not smile. I only sat down and closed my eyes. The guard brought me water. "You did it," he said. "You saved Solaris." But in my heart, it did not feel like a win. That night, I walked in the palace alone. I stopped by the garden again. The roses were not red anymore. They had fallen from the cold. I sat down and looked at the empty path. I thought of Cassian again. Where was he now? Did he remember me? Did he care? A week later, a traveler brought a letter to the gate. It was from the west. The paper was clean. The seal was silver. I knew the mark. It was from Cassian. I sat in my room and read it slowly. He wrote, "Layla, I hope you are well. I heard about the battle. You were brave. I know I failed you. I had no choice. The council turned against me. They wanted war. I had to leave. I am now far away, but I still think of you. Please forgive me. One day, I may return. If not, know that you were the only true light in my life." That was the last time I heard from him. I read Cassian's letter many times. Each word felt quiet. Each sentence felt like a door that would never open again. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to forget him, but I could not. His face lived in my memory. His voice stayed in my mind. His promise. It still hurt the most. I put the letter in a small wooden box. I locked it. I did not cry. I did not scream. I walked to the window and looked out at Solaris. The people were working. The streets were clean. The smoke of war was gone. My people were safe. That was all that mattered now. But I was not the same. I had changed. I no longer looked at the river and dreamed. I no longer waited for flowers to grow in the garden. I wore my crown, but it felt heavy. My smile became small. My heart became quiet. The world outside looked peaceful, but inside me, everything had become still. Time passed. Months turned into seasons. People said I was a strong queen. They said I had saved the land. They said my father would be proud. I listened. I thanked them. But I stayed alone. I did not open my heart again. I did not trust easily. Love had become a soft wound I carried in silence. One day, my advisor came to me with a request. A school in the village had no books. I remembered how much I loved to read as a child. I went to visit them. I sat with the children. They showed me their letters. I gave them new pages and new ink. I smiled. For the first time in months, I felt a warm light inside. After that day, I visited the village often. I spoke to mothers. I helped build small homes. I started to listen more. I walked without guards. I sat by the river again, but now it was with the people. They began to see me not only as a queen, but as someone who cared. Still, at night, when the halls were quiet, I sometimes walked to the rose garden. The flowers had started to grow again. Not as bright as before, but they were there. I sat on the old stone bench and looked at the stars. I did not wait for Cassian anymore, but I remembered him. I would always remember. One evening, a woman from the east arrived at the gate. She had a baby in her arms. She asked to speak with me. I said yes. I met her in the hall. She held the baby close and said, "My husband died in the war. I have no one. I walked for 2 days. Please, I need a home." I looked at the baby. He was small and thin. His eyes were big and quiet. I did not speak for a moment. Then I asked, "What is his name?" She said, "I have not given him a name. I was waiting for hope." I said, "Then name him Solan. It means light." She looked at me. Her eyes filled with tears. She said, "Thank you, my queen." I gave her a room in the palace. I told the doctor to help her. I gave her food, clothes, and a place to stay. After that day, more women came. Some had lost fathers. Some had lost sons. Some had lost everything. I opened the palace gates. I opened my heart again. We made a new hall in the palace. The Hall of Women. It became a safe place. A place for mothers, daughters, widows, and girls with no home. They cooked together. They told stories. They sang. I sat with them every week. They started to call me not just Queen Layla, but Layla of the people. One morning, a little girl from the hall came to me. She gave me a flower. It was a red rose. She said, "This is for you. You look sad sometimes, but I think you are kind." I bent down and hugged her. "Thank you," I said. I will keep it close. That night, I placed the rose on my desk beside the wooden box with Cassian's letter. I touched the box, but I did not open it. I no longer needed the words inside. I was not that girl anymore. I had changed. Not in silence, not in pain, but through choice, through time. 1 year later, we held a celebration in the city. It was the Day of Peace. A full year had passed since the last battle. The streets were full of color. Music filled the air. People danced. Children ran. I stood on the high steps of the palace and looked out at my land. The sky was blue. The river moved slow. The bells rang. And in that moment, I felt proud. A woman next to me asked, "Do you miss the old days?" I said, "No. I miss nothing. I am here now." Later that night, I sat in my room. I took out the wooden box. I opened it. I read the letter one last time. I smiled. Not because it made me happy, but because I had survived it. I folded the letter and walked outside. The wind was soft. The moon was full. I went to the garden and sat on the old bench. I took a deep breath and lit a small fire. Then I burned the letter. I watched the paper turn to ash. I felt peace. The past had no power now. In the days that followed, I started something new. I wrote letters to other queens. I shared ideas. I built a trade path with the mountains. I opened more schools. I trained girls to become leaders. I gave them books, not swords. I gave them pens, not fear. One girl asked me, "Why do you work so much?" I said, "Because I once waited for someone to save me. But now, I want to teach you to save yourselves." That girl smiled. She said, "Then you are not only our queen, you are our teacher." And I smiled back. Years passed. My hair became gray. My face showed time. But my eyes stayed bright. I never married. I never saw Cassian again. But I did not wait for him. I had chosen my own life. Not a life of crowns and battles, but a life of care, of service, and of truth. I became more than a queen. I became the woman I needed to be all along. We all go through hard times, but stories like this can help us feel seen. Thank you for watching, and come back for more real moments.